This isn't a dating tip. This is the psychological switch that makes someone go from liking you to wanting you. Stop chasing. Stop begging for attention. Stop believing that the only way to be liked is to over-explain yourself, overgive, or overshare. If anyone has ever told you that being endlessly available is the key to attraction, you've been misled. Not because kindness is wrong, but because attraction doesn't grow in environments where one person abandons themselves just to be chosen. Most men lose not because they're too nice, but because they operate under the wrong assumptions about connection. They think effort alone creates desire. They think availability equals affection. They think giving more will somehow be the thing that finally tips the scale. But the truth is deeper, older, and far more connected to human behavior than modern dating cliches. This isn't about playing games. This isn't about manipulation. This is about understanding psychology, perception, and the value of self-respect. For centuries, philosophers and strategists studied how humans assign value, not just in politics or power, but in relationships, community, and influence. One of those thinkers, Niccolò Machiavelli, explored how people respond to scarcity, boundaries, and the presence of someone who carries himself with purpose. Even though he wrote about rulers and diplomacy, many of his observations reveal something powerful about human attraction. People value what is not endlessly available. And if you stay with me, I'll walk you through 5 principles, reimagined for modern relationships, that shift your mindset from chasing approval to living with intention and confidence. You'll understand why being grounded, self-directed, and selective creates stronger connection than being constantly accessible. And you'll learn why maintaining your peace, even when it risks disappointing someone, is often the key to genuine respect. If you're ready for a clear, honest look at how desire really works, don't go anywhere. This might challenge what you've been taught, but it will also set you free. Rule 1. The strategy of the scarce resource. Here's the reality. People value what they can't take for granted. It's not a trick. It's human nature. When something is always present, always predictable, and always easy to access, the brain files it away as ordinary. When something stands out, when it has weight, when it requires effort or intention, it becomes meaningful. That's why a breathtaking sunset feels special, even though sunsets happen every day. It's why a rare moment of quiet can feel priceless in a noisy world. And it's why a man who values his time, purpose, and direction is more compelling than a man who gives every part of himself without pause. Most men accidentally make themselves too available. They answer instantly. They cancel their plans. They reveal everything at once. They treat attention like something they must earn rather than something they naturally possess. At first, this might feel comforting or flattering to the other person. But with time, predictability turns into invisibility. Not because the man isn't good enough, but because there is nothing left to discover. Connection thrives on discovery. Attraction thrives on contrast. Desire thrives on intentional presence, not constant presence. A man who lives with mission, curiosity, ambition, discipline, a man who is building something, naturally becomes scarce. Not because he's avoiding people, but because his life is full. He has direction. He has responsibilities. He has passions that require focus. He doesn't need to pretend to be busy. He is busy with purpose. And here's the important part. When he shows up fully. He listens with intention. He engages with warmth. He gives his presence, not just his time, because his life is balanced with goals outside the relationship. The moments he shares feel meaningful. They don't feel generic or routine. They feel chosen. This creates a subtle psychological effect. The fear of losing access to something valuable. Not fear in a toxic sense, but awareness. Awareness that this man's time is not infinite. Awareness that his attention is not casual. Awareness that he is building something bigger than himself. And with that awareness comes appreciation. She values his presence more because she knows it's not mindless or automatic. She adjusts, invests, and shows care because she recognizes the privilege of being included in his world. Without manipulation. Without games. Without pretending. Just by living with intention. The key is balance. If a man disappears entirely, he seems uninterested. If he's constantly available, he becomes background noise. But if he gives presence with purpose, and pairs it with healthy, meaningful absence, he creates an emotional rhythm. That rhythm keeps the connection alive, dynamic, and exciting. This is why a man must never revolve his entire identity around someone else. Not because connection isn't valuable, but because self-abandonment kills desire faster than anything. A woman instinctively respects a man who values himself, who prioritizes his growth, who has a larger mission guiding his steps. Because when he chooses her, it's clear, it's not out of loneliness, not out of desperation, but out of genuine alignment. That is what makes him feel like gold, not sand. Rule 2. The virtue of protected boundaries. Machiavelli famously wrote that leaders must sometimes make difficult choices, not to harm others, but to protect their domain. When adapted into the world of relationships, this becomes a simple truth. You can be kind and still say no. You can be caring and still disappoint someone sometimes. You can be loving without sacrificing your integrity. Many men struggle with this. They want to avoid tension. They want to keep the peace. They fear that saying no will push someone away. So they bend. They overextend. They abandon commitments. They silence their needs. Not because they're weak men, but because they were taught that self-sacrifice equals love. But here's what actually happens. When a man betrays his own values to avoid disappointing someone, he loses their respect and his own. Healthy attraction doesn't grow from someone who is endlessly agreeable. It grows from someone who is grounded, who honors his commitments, and who isn't afraid to protect his well-being. Take a simple example. She messages you late at night wanting to vent, but you have work at dawn. The people-pleasing version of you stays up anyway. The grounded version kindly says, "I want to give you my full attention, but I need rest tonight. Let's talk tomorrow." One response abandons yourself. The other respects both of you. Or she asks you to skip your workout, something important to your physical and mental health. The passive version cancels. The purposeful version says, "I'm training tonight, but I'd love to see you after." This isn't cruelty. It isn't distance. It's alignment, and alignment builds respect. Because she sees a man who stands on solid ground. A man who keeps promises to himself. A man who doesn't collapse under emotional pressure. That kind of man is trustworthy. That kind of man is attractive. That kind of man creates stability, not by force, but by clarity. Women don't lose interest because a man says no. They lose interest when he becomes someone who has nothing to stand for. Boundaries aren't walls. They're direction. They're identity. They're the guardrails that keep your purpose intact. And purpose is magnetic. Rule 3. The power of presence without overexposure. Niccolò Machiavelli wrote that a ruler doesn't have to embody every virtue perfectly. He simply has to appear composed, confident, and capable. Human beings respond to perception long before they respond to proof. And whether we like it or not, attraction follows the same principle. This idea often gets twisted into something manipulative, but at its core, it's simple. What people imagine about you can be more powerful than what you tell them. Many men exhaust themselves trying to prove they're valuable. They talk too much. They overshare too soon. They list their achievements instead of letting their character speak. They try to be entertaining, impressive, or constantly charming, as if silence is a threat. But when you try that hard, you accidentally reveal the truth you're hoping to hide. You're seeking validation. A man who is comfortable with himself doesn't rush to fill silence. He doesn't try to win approval in every conversation. He doesn't need to broadcast his accomplishments, because he's busy building more. A man like that becomes magnetic not through noise, but through aura. Imagine this. Two men walk into a room. The first laughs loudly, tells stories, tries to dominate every moment. The second carries himself with quiet certainty, speaks intentionally, and lets others reveal themselves before he does. Which one sparks curiosity? Curiosity is the fuel of attraction. And curiosity is born when you leave space for someone to wonder about you. This doesn't mean hiding your life or pretending to be mysterious. It means you reveal your world piece by piece. You don't dump your entire history in the first hour. You share your dreams without bragging. You show discipline instead of announcing it. A woman doesn't connect deeply because you recite or resume. She connects because she senses depth, the kind that unfolds slowly. This is why storytelling is more powerful than data. Why subtlety is more compelling than spectacle. Why presence is more attractive than performance. Let's say you mention a project you're working on. You don't boast, you simply express genuine passion. You don't over-explain. You don't try to sell yourself. You plant a seed. And suddenly, she's thinking about it later. Who is he becoming? What drives him like that? What's the bigger picture? That space, that unanswered question, creates emotional engagement. The same principle applies to behavior. You don't need to claim that you're ambitious. Wake up early. Work on your craft. Show discipline. Show resilience. Your actions do the talking. You don't need to say you're confident. Just stand with posture. Speak slowly. Hold eye contact. Speak only when you have something meaningful to say. Confidence isn't a script, it's an energy. And here's the wild part. People believe what you consistently appear to be, not because you're deceiving them, but because perception is the lens through which they understand your reality. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to embody intentionality. The man who embraces this rule becomes a walking story, one that someone wants to read, understand, and follow. She becomes invested not because she knows everything about you, but because she wants to know. The more she imagines, the more she feels. And the more she feels, the more she connects. Rule 4. The rhythm that makes desire come alive. Most men believe consistency means stability. They think that if they show the exact same level of affection every day, the relationship will feel secure. But here's the nuance. Stability is essential. Predictability is not. When a man becomes predictable in every action, every response, and every emotional rhythm, something begins to fade. The spark isn't gone because anything is wrong. It's gone simply because there's no contrast. Humans are wired to feel through variation. Warmth feels warmer after distance. Attention feels deeper after solitude. Connection feels stronger after independence. This is why stories, music, and art rely on contrast, tension and release, silence and sound, light and shadow. Attraction works the same way. A man who understands this doesn't smother someone with constant availability, nor does he disappear as some tactic. He simply lives life with a natural pendulum of connection and individuality. When he's present, he's truly present. He listens. He engages. He gives warmth that feels sincere and grounded. And then, when life calls, he shifts back into his purpose. His workouts. His work. His hobbies. His solitude. His masculine recharge. The rhythm is natural, not calculated. This pattern activates a psychological truth. People appreciate what is not constant. They value what they must re-experience, not what they're drowning in. Let's make this simple. If someone eats their favorite dessert every day, it becomes ordinary. But if they enjoy it occasionally, each moment feels special. This doesn't diminish love. It intensifies it. A woman who experiences this healthy rhythm begins to feel emotionally alive. She anticipates connection. She misses you in a healthy way. She remembers the last deep moment you shared, because the space afterward gave her a chance to reflect on it. When presence is intentional and absence is meaningful, desire breathes. But men who fear losing connection often go the opposite route. They give constant reassurance, constant affection, constant attention, constant explanations, and constant anything leads to emotional numbness. On the flip side, disappearing to trigger someone's fear is equally unhealthy. It destroys trust. The art lies in this balance. Be fully present when you're present. Be fully yourself when you're not. The more grounded your identity is outside the relationship, the more powerful your presence becomes inside it. You're not creating tension through confusion. You're creating resonance through contrast. And that resonance is what keeps a woman invested, curious, and emotionally engaged. Not because she's insecure, but because the relationship has a pulse instead of a flatline. Rule 5. Inspiring her investment. There's a subtle truth about human behavior. We value the things we invest in. This is why people treasure goals they worked hard to achieve. Why handmade gifts feel priceless. Why someone who puts effort into a relationship forms deeper bonds. Many men misunderstand this dynamic. They believe that giving endlessly is the way to earn loyalty. They pour out everything too fast. Time, attention, compliments, energy, hoping generosity will create attachment. But when someone invests nothing in return, their heart has no roots in the connection. The strategist understands something different. Attraction grows strongest when both people contribute, not just one. This doesn't mean demanding things. It doesn't mean expecting constant gestures. It means creating opportunities for her to be part of your world. When she invests her ideas, her time, her creativity, she begins forming an emotional connection that isn't based on what you've given her, but on what she's building with you. These small investments shift her internal story. If I'm contributing to his life, it must mean he's important to me. If I'm giving effort, there must be something valuable here. The more she invests, the more connected she feels. Not because you manipulated her, but because this is how human psychology works. And the man who understands this never needs to beg for affection. Affection grows naturally in the soil she helps cultivate. Rule 5. Continue the master stroke of emotional investment. Here's the deeper layer of this principle. When she invests in you, even in small, simple ways, she is also investing in her own identity within your world. That creates meaning. Meaning creates attachment. And attachment creates momentum. Think about it like this. A person who waters a plant every day becomes attached to it, not because the plant asked, not because the plant begged, but because the act of giving created emotional weight. Humans bond through effort. A woman who gives effort toward you experiences a psychological shift that no amount of giving on your part can recreate. She begins seeing you not as an option, but as someone she has chosen to build with, someone she has emotionally contributed to. And when she contributes, she becomes more connected. Now, here's where men often go wrong. They give so much, so fast, that there's no room left for her to participate, no space for her to care for the connection, no opportunities to express affection or loyalty. Generosity is beautiful, but overgiving kills polarity. Not because generosity is bad, but because it leaves no space for her to invest back. The connection becomes one-sided, and anything one-sided loses balance. The man who understands this doesn't lock himself behind walls, and he doesn't demand anything. Instead, he simply invites her into his world in a natural, meaningful way. What do you think about this project I'm working on? Can you help me choose between these two ideas? I'm trying to improve this. What's your take? Let's cook together. You do this part, I'll do the rest. Small, simple acts, but psychologically powerful. She becomes part of your momentum, part of your growth, part of your life. And once someone becomes part of your momentum, they naturally want to protect it. They want to nurture what they've helped create. This is why people stay loyal to things they've invested in: jobs, dreams, friendships, relationships. And this is why a connection that carries shared effort lasts longer than one built solely on gifts, compliments, or one-sided attention. Remember this truth: people stay where they invest, not where they are merely entertained. When she invests, she becomes connected. When she becomes connected, she becomes committed. And when she becomes committed, the relationship becomes resilient, not shallow or fragile. That is the silent power of emotional investment. The 5 rules coming together. Once you understand all 5 rules, the picture becomes clear. Scarcity gives your presence value. Boundaries earn respect. Mystery ignites curiosity. Rhythm keeps desire alive. Investment creates loyalty. These principles are not tricks. They're not manipulation. They're not dating hacks. They're simply the psychological and emotional forces that shape meaningful human connection. Most men try to create attraction by giving more of themselves. But true attraction doesn't come from intensity. It comes from balance. It comes from a man who is grounded, purposeful, and emotionally steady. A man who doesn't chase validation. A man who values his mission. A man who respects his time and maintains his identity. A man who creates emotional space for a woman to contribute, not just receive. When a man lives like this, something powerful happens. He stops chasing. He stops overthinking. He stops bending himself into shapes to please someone else. Instead, he becomes a man with gravity. Someone who draws people into his world simply by being aligned with himself. The real transformation, from approval-seeking to purpose-driven. Let's be honest, most men don't need more tips. They don't need more tricks. They don't need to memorize lines or fake confidence. What they actually need is this: to build a life worth inviting someone into. A life with purpose. A life with direction. A life with standards. A life with self-respect. When a man lives with intention, he naturally becomes more attractive, more confident, and more magnetic without forcing anything. Because attraction isn't something you perform. Attraction is something you embody. It's the byproduct of self-alignment. When a man knows who he is, and he moves through the world with authenticity, he doesn't chase people, he chooses them. And when he chooses someone from a place of strength, not desperation, the connection that forms is deeper, healthier, and more stable. Women don't want perfection. They want clarity. They want direction. They want consistency of purpose. They want a man who is not afraid to stand for something. Not a man who is rigid. Not a man who is controlling. But a man who knows himself. A man whose presence feels like solid ground. The shift in her experience. When you apply these principles, the dynamic naturally transforms. Instead of you wondering whether she likes you, she wonders what you're building next. Instead of you chasing her approval, she tries to earn more of your time. Instead of you overthinking every message, she becomes curious about what you're up to. Instead of you abandoning your life to fit into hers, she adapts to be part of yours. This shift is not about dominance, it's about balance. It's about creating a connection where both people contribute, where both people grow, and where both people feel drawn toward each other through respect and emotional engagement. When a woman respects a man, attraction naturally blossoms. When she invests in him, loyalty naturally forms. When she feels both warmth and contrast, desire naturally awakens. You don't force any of this. You simply create the conditions that allow it to grow. Your new strategy begins now. These 5 rules aren't about trying harder. They're about trying differently. They're about letting go of the habits that drain your confidence and replacing them with behaviors that strengthen your sense of self. If you adopt even one of these principles, your interactions will change. If you adopt all 5, your entire dating life will transform. Not because women will suddenly chase you, but because you'll finally be living in a way that honors your value. So here's the question. Are you going to fall back into the old pattern of overgiving and over-explaining? Or will you step into the mindset of a man who leads his life with purpose, clarity, and confidence? If you're ready to stop chasing and start attracting through presence, this is your moment. Like this video right now if you're committed to becoming the strongest version of yourself. Subscribe and join a community of men who choose strategy, purpose, and self-respect over approval seeking. And in the comments, let me know which of these 5 rules you're going to focus on first, and how you plan to apply it. Your new chapter starts now.